The short story that the movie is based on was written by a member of the Illuminati named Rudyard Kipling more than a century ago, and since the movie's release in 1975, this movie's storyline and concepts have been reused by other Illuminati insiders in Hollywood. A detailed comparison of The Man Who Would Be King and these other movies can be found in Hollywood Insider's Full Disclosure. In this film, I'll simply summarize those comparisons. From the outside, which is the same as not being familiar with the symbols, it appears that the following movies are blatant rip-offs of The Man Who Would Be King and each other. But maybe that's not what's happening. Maybe what's happening is that The Man Who Would Be King, many of the following movies, and countless others are all based on the same root story, and because of it, simply appear to rip off of each other. Our first offender is Roland Emmerich. Roland Emmerich is a German, born in 1955, openly gay, an art collector, big surprise, but most importantly, he's a pathetic excuse for a writer. Roland directed and in many cases produced and wrote the stories from movies like Independence Day, Stargate, Godzilla, The Day After Tomorrow, 10,000 BC, 2012, and a few other crappy movies. His retelling of The Man Who Would Be King, or the most obvious one, was Stargate. Stargate is about a portal that's been lying in the sands of the Egyptian desert for ages. The portal was discovered by an excavation team and decades later was activated. The portal, once activated, opened a gate to a planet on the other side of the universe. The group chosen to walk through the Stargate consisted of a small Special Forces squad and an Egyptologist named Danny. Similar to Danny from The Man Who Would Be King, Danny from Stargate is given a charm with an all-seeing eye on it just before departure. After walking through the Stargate, they arrive to a primitive land, whose locals take notice of Danny's amulet and mistake him for a divine being. After a series of events where most of the soldiers are killed, the local people all unite under the leadership of Danny and the remaining soldiers. Eventually, the sun god Ra, the antagonist of the movie, is killed by Danny and Jack. Afterwards, Daniel decides to stay and take a local for a wife, rather than going home through the Stargate with Jack and the remaining soldiers. There are even some scenes in the movie that appear to deliberately draw from The Man Who Would Be King. The second major movie that Roland wrote was Independence Day. Released in 1996, Independence Day, or ID4 as the advertising campaign would come to call it, was a huge hit. Its major draw, like all of Emmerich's movies, was its action and special effects scenes. The script itself was poorly written. In the movie, an alien sneak attack leaves humanity retreating on all sides. A sense of hopelessness sets in as more counterattacks fail. Finally, it falls upon two men to deliver a computer virus to the aliens' mothership in space. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the human race is forming a global command structure in order to engage the aliens in a unified way. This global command, led by the American president naturally, finds the aliens' weakness and brings a screeching halt to the alien invasion. The Day After Tomorrow, released in 2004, was everything we've come to expect from Roland Emmerich. Stale characters, bad dialogue, factual inaccuracies, and needlessly long. The Day After Tomorrow is about a series of disasters that have been triggered by global warming. The first indication that this was a bad movie, aside from Dennis Quaid, is NASA's answer to Roland Emmerich's request that they do scientific consultation for his new film.
What's NASA have to say?
NASA said for your people to stop calling their people. Apparently, Roland asked NASA to, give him a few pointers regarding making his movie more scientifically accurate. Evidently, not even an army of rocket scientists could bridge the gap between Emmerich's newest film and scientific reality. NASA, who has always pushed the global warming story, declined to have their four little letters associated with the movie in any way. Why, you ask? The film contains scenes and scenarios that would make even Al Gore blush. Giant hurricane ice storms that can freeze anything in seconds, tornadoes in LA, blizzards in India, all caused by global warming, somehow.
Excuse me, when do you think this could happen, Professor? When?
I don't know. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000. But what I...
You heard him, folks. This global warming thing can kick in anytime. 1,000 years from now, 100 years from now, or even the day after tomorrow. A mere 2 days after Mr. Quaid's stirring address to the nations regarding long-term climate change, the laws of thermodynamics go on vacation. So much so that The Day After Tomorrow has found itself on more than one list of most scientifically inaccurate movies of all time. And still, the movie goes on and on about the science. The science, the science, the science. This is done so that the viewer associates global warming and all the other bogusness with the science. The movie leads the viewer to assume that scientists unanimously support global warming, but even that is false. Here's Dr. John Coleman, meteorologist and founder of the Weather Channel.
My next guest wants to sue Al Gore for fraud. He hopes a legal challenge will settle the global warming debate once and for all. He's John Coleman, and he founded the Weather Channel. So, John, why do you want to sue Al Gore?
Well, the deal is this, Greg. We have tried and tried and tried to get a debate on global warming with scientists on the other side. Al Gore or any of the scientists behind him over at the UN IPCC, we'd love to have a debate with him, but they say, oh no, the debate is over.
Yeah.
Well, now there are 30,000 of us. We have 30,000 scientists, 9,000 PhDs, who have signed up to debunk global warming. And they still won't listen to us.
Now, you say in a lot of your writing that global warming is a scam. Why do you think that?
Well, if you study all the papers of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if you study everything their scientists have done, it all boils down to a claim that carbon dioxide, CO2 in the atmosphere, put there by our burning of fossil fuels, is going to turn the climate of Earth into an oven, and we're all going to bake and die. Well, that's sheer nonsense. We have been burning fossil fuels for 100 years. And what have we done so far? We might have raised the temperature by 1/10 of 1 degree, maybe.
Are you real concerned about this global warming?
I'm only concerned about the incredible frenzy and hype for something that's a total myth. And how many billions of dollars apparently our governments are going to spend of our tax dollars to combat something that isn't real. That has my attention, believe me. As a scientist, I know that global warming doesn't really exist at all.
Now, are you saying that there hasn't even been any warming of the...
Well, there's absolutely natural climate fluctuations. We have little ice ages, we have warm-ups. Historically, the Earth has vacillated through all of these. Solar cycles change dramatically. Ocean currents change. And all of that has a significant impact on climate.
Well, doesn't that bring us to the point that Mr. Gore makes and many others, that science has spoken? There is a universal consensus among scientists.
Well, if you look at the history of the IPCC, it was formed by people whose agendas were of question. And it was from people who had world government in mind.
Roland Emmerich's next movie of interest is 10,000 BC. This movie too has traces of the man who would be king, a chosen one with a mark on his body who was prophesied to come and lead the people to victory and freedom. The movie is about a man named Delay, whose family and friends were captured by a group of raiders called the Four-Legged Demons. He sets out on a quest to reclaim his consort and people from the kidnappers. After a dangerous journey, he comes upon people who live under the same oppression of the very same villains responsible for the kidnapping of Delay's people. These people find a mark on him that designates him as a chosen one. Eventually, the warriors of the surrounding nations united under Delay's leadership. Delay would then lead a successful rebellion. This movie, similar to Stargate, hints that the pyramids are actually 10,000 years old or more. There is evidence, all outside the scope of this video, that the pyramids are much older than mainstream scholars suggest. Books like Fingerprints of the Gods detail the evidence for a much more ancient Egypt. For now, it's safe to say that 10,000 BC and Stargate have a lot in common, a mark found on a chosen one that will unite the people and lead them to freedom over their oppressors. Also, a last-minute revelation that's virtually identical.
He is not a god!
Yemyumae, Aturuti. Yemyumae.
And lastly, we have Roland Emmerich's latest Fear Fest, 2012. This movie has one purpose and one purpose only: fear. Similar to The Day After Tomorrow, the global effects are so sudden that they violate the laws of physics. In the movie, a recent large sun flare has produced a wave of quote-unquote mutated neutrinos. These neutrinos are penetrating the Earth and heating the Earth's core. After mere days, the Earth's liquid core separates from the surface, causing the Earth to simply cave in on itself. And, as its title suggests, all of these horrible events are said to occur at the end of the Mayan calendar, 2012. First, a neutrino is an electrically neutral particle, so a burst of them would not be released by the same conditions that would accompany a solar flare, which are magnetic in nature. Secondly, neutrinos rarely interact with matter and would usually pass through the Earth harmlessly, but if they did begin to interact with matter, they would have warmed up the atmosphere, surface, and oceans before heating the core, and all of this pales into comparison to the fact that the Mayans predicted nothing like this. The movie 2012 and the disasters therein are all based on the end of the Mayan calendar, or the perception thereof. The Mayan calendar, similar to ours, has months, weeks, and days that tick away like an odometer. In our system, we have 7 days to the week, approximately 4 weeks to the month, 12 months to a year, and from there, only the year continues to roll over. So, instead of getting to the 8th day in the week, we will roll over 1 week and begin the count again. Instead of getting to the 5th week of the month, we roll over 1 month, and instead of getting to the 13th month of the year, we roll over 1 year. The Mayans have a similar system, but instead is based on the number 20, with one exception. In the Mayan system, after 20 days, the Mayans roll over 1 minal. After 18 minals, the Mayans roll over 1 tune. So 1 tune equals 18 minals equals 360 days, or approximately 1 year. After 20 tunes, or 20 years, they roll over 1 katun. After 20 katuns, or 394 years, they roll over 1 baktun. And after 20 baktuns, they roll over 1 piktun. December 22nd, 2012 will be the first day of the 14th baktun. The Mayans believe that the gods made 3 creations before ours, and so the calendar has restarted 3 times. The most recent of those creations ended at the beginning of the 14th baktun. However, those were admittedly failed universes, unlike the successful one that we are said to occupy. And since there are 20 baktuns in 1 piktun, the calendar keeps going. So the only thing that ends on December 21st, 2012 is the end of a 394-year cycle. But this is not the end of time, simply the rolling over of the odometer. It will simply be the end of the 13th baktun since creation, which started at 3114 BC. Which means that 2012 is no more significant than September of 1618, or March of 2407. And as for Mayan prophecies of disaster, There is only one prophecy the Mayans ever made regarding 2012, the arrival